Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS to Shout Out Show. Hope you're having a wonderful day. At the top of the show, I want to give my cousin, my big cousin, Lisa Beth, I want to give you a shout out for a happy birthday. I hope everything's well. I know you might still be grieving the loss of your pet, Bootsy, but you know what? Family's still here, and best of all, you're still here. So happy birthday to you. Brothers and sisters, here's a fundamental question about education. Fundamental question. What's better? The education grows you in a process, or education gives you access to different levels of society? It grows you in the process, or the name, if you will, the name of the process that you've gone through allows you certain benefits, or for lack of a better word, privileges. Today's discussion is interesting. You've seen me parade and talk about graduating from Bayan Islamic Graduate School, my master's in Islamic education. I have a BA of journalism, a minor in film from Marquette University, and have enjoyed those schools. And even my early years, 6 years at St. John's College High School Military School. All of them private institutions. As I sit here and try to put the words together without coming to unravel at the scene, I feel like in the selection of those schools, at the time, granted, I was young. I was very young, 17, 18 years old. My priorities were different. But as I look back, brothers and sisters, I feel like I did a crime and a disservice in not fully considering the power and the strength of historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs. When I say that, it means that I have a bit of an epiphany in terms of what they are. The epiphany came today. I like podcasts. I listened to a podcast by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Revisionist History. The name of the podcast was called What's Wrong with Dillard University? Dillard University is a private, historically Black college down in New Orleans. Dillard has a rich history, been around really since the end of slavery. 2 years after slavery, they had Dillard University. It was under different names. But what I'm saying is that the process, education came quickly after the Emancipation Proclamation. I'm listening to this podcast called What's Wrong with Dillard University? And the question is, why is Dillard University ranked so low as a college? In the U.S. News reports ranking of colleges, they had the top schools. You can imagine who they are. They had schools under that. And way down at the bottom, they had Dillard University. And the question was, why was Dillard University so low? Of course, I kept listening to the podcast, and things became frighteningly clear. When I say frighteningly clear, it's to the point where I come on a podcast and say, I think I made a tragic mistake. Not in going to a HBCU, but in undervaluing what that experience could be. You know, we all want to go to the big schools, particularly when we're young and we're athletes. We want to play D1. You could tell where this is going. But at my age now, I'm looking around and I'm saying, those are the backbones of American higher education. A tradition of doing more with less and turning out incredible scholarship and incredible students, but yet they rank at the bottom. And through the well wishes and the research of Mr. Malcolm Gladwell, they began to ask questions about this ranking. because the ranking is very arbitrary, but then again, it's not very arbitrary. The ranking is set up in a way where the algorithm pretty much guarantees that Dillard University will be at the bottom of the list, pretty much the same as every other HBCU, which could be inclusive of Clark Atlanta, Spelman, Morehouse, Lincoln, Howard, all of these great institutions that have turned out amazing people. We're going to come back on that. I hope you guys are going to stick around. And this is one of those things. I'm just happy we're going to be able to talk about this topic and get it out there. And I don't care who watches this. I just want to make sure that I did my part to talk about the importance and the spiritual and societal importance of HBCUs. Let's go and get the start. Let's get the show started. I'm Preacher Moss. Let's go. And we're back, everybody. I hope you're having a great day. You know, it's More Better Mondays. You know how important it is to get that Monday out of the way. Today, I'm just going to rush through it. If you're here to watch the Shout Out Show and it's your first time, God bless you. We appreciate you coming through, dropping through, spending a little bit of time. I have to amend this a little bit. If you have something to say, some ideas, please don't be shy. Get in the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking. Share with us your thoughts, your values, and you're going to get that shout out. But for the most part, I just want to talk a little bit because these type of things are interesting. As I was telling Satana before the show, it's like, man, when you have something that weighs on you and makes you rethink about so many other things, rethink about the importance of this establishment, historically Black colleges and universities, which we'll be referring to as HBCUs. You know, it was really, really important. I was like, I've got to talk about this because for the most part, a lot of us, particularly African Americans, are really sleeping on the importance and the power of HBCUs. So, you guys know what to do. If you don't mind, click the notification button, the subscribe button, the like button if you get a chance. If not, it's okay. So let's get to our stars in the building. We are missing one today. We are missing one, but it's okay. My brother Altaf, Mr. Say, straight up, 6 o'clock. Straight up, straight down. How are you doing, my brother? Appreciate you coming on the show. Appreciate your participation and your support. As always, we know that when Altaf is on the show, the quality control for the show on both sides of the border is important. More so, Altaf, let me just take a minute to say I appreciate some of the insights that you've been sharing. And I'd like for you to actually jump in on this one right here. If you don't mind, I'm going to lay the groundwork. And I just want to hear your thoughts. You know, I don't know where you went to school, where you graduated college, but I think it'd be interesting because in Canada they really don't have HBCUs, so this is a totally different thing. But I'm going to lay out the meritocracy and of course the conceptual understanding of HBCUs. My main man Altaf, thanks so much. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We got Sister Ika coming all the way from Indonesia. How you doing, Sister Ika? Much love to you and the family. Hope everything's going well. You're feeling well. You're getting stronger. Be aware and take that vaccine and stay away from people who have not taken the vaccine. Your health is your wealth. All right. Thank you, Sister Ika. Next up, we have our consultant producer, Sister. We have Sister Satana Woodfield, who's working the back, but she might jump on here for the conversation today. I appreciate you, sisters. So let's get to it. The spiritual and societal importance of HBCUs. First of all, most of you know, if you don't know, the whole advent of HBCUs bears out of the fact that after slavery, there were no schools. There were no places of higher learning for freed slaves. Thus, the AMA, the American Muslim American Missionary Association, decided to give land grants whereby our freed slaves could build their own schools. Now, here's the thing that you really need to know. they had to build schools that would scale to the level of actually being a college and a university. Many of them were trade schools, okay? Many of them were trade schools, but they served a certain purpose, a vital purpose, which was it gave at least spiritually and visually, it gave at least the idea that a slave that was a free man had tools and education that would give them mobility off the plantation, mobility in terms of building your own business. This is very crucial, okay? And you could take the Harvards, you could take the Yales and all that. They weren't doing that for freed slaves. The thing that becomes really, really apparent, brothers and sisters, is that they've maintained that characteristic. Let me talk about this characteristic. They maintained a characteristic whereby they knew that the people they were trying to effectively scale up, slaves that couldn't read, slaves that couldn't write, we're going to take these people, we're going to give them these tools, and effectively, inshallah, they said we're going to move them to not only be functional, but also to be intellectual, to create a working class or a meaningful class of Black intellectuals that come up out of the plantation. I'm sorry, that's damn near impossible. However, impossible is not a word for them. Failure is not an option. And so you have the proliferation of these schools that pop up here, there. Nobody looks at them, brothers and sisters. Nobody looks at them because nobody really thought that, number one, Black people could think, and number two, they definitely could not educate themselves. So let's flash forward about this podcast I heard. If you go to Apple Podcasts, it's Revisionist History. The title of it is called What's Wrong with Dillard? So imagine I just told you that a school like Dillard in New Orleans did exactly what I just told you these Black students were doing, these Black schools were doing. However, in terms of college ranking, they rank at the bottom. They literally rank at the bottom. If there's a bottom below the bottom, that's probably where all the other HBCUs are. Jackson State, Alabama A&M, South Carolina State. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. The host of this show, his name is Malcolm Gladwell. He's had books called Blink and Think, or he's had a bunch of books. You should check him out. He asked the question, why are these schools ranked so low? Now, anybody here knows, ego aside, if you were to look at a ranking of schools and you looked at the top school, you don't really look at the bottom school. The bottom school is not an option. The top 10 is what you're trying to get into. And even in the college system, brothers and sisters, the college systems have a ranking for students to deal in terms of student qualifications because the schools are trying to recruit a particular type of student. So this speaks to elitism, if you will. But they have a class, like the A class would be the kids that can go to any top school, Harvard, they qualify for that school. The next group of kids is basically a group of kids who could go to the top state schools. That's 1 and 2, A and B, and C, we don't talk about C. Ironically, the C is where we find the proliferation of these HBCUs. But they're not C universities. They are A universities. So the question is why? Why is the ranking so low? Why is the ranking so low? Here's the one that hit me in the teeth. The gut punch, if you will. Let me give a salam. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show. Good to see you again. The gut punch of why these schools were so low, brothers and sisters, is that in their nature, they do what they're supposed to do to help the people that they serve. If you want to know about a Harvard or Princeton or Yale, great institutions, they don't serve the public. Let me say that again. They don't serve the public. they enjoy an aspect of if they have 186 incoming freshmen and Dillard has 186 incoming freshmen. The difference between Harvard and Dillard is that Dillard probably had 186 incoming freshmen and they probably got 250 applications. But Harvard had 186 incoming freshmen and got 10,000 applications. Does this start to make sense to you? That the value, brothers and sisters, is in the fact that they take from the top. They take the creme de la creme. The top students, they can get the top high school students from anywhere. And HBCUs have built a reputation of taking students who were not the top students and developing them into being top students. Some of the top STEM students come out of HBCUs, not Harvard, not Princeton, not Yale. And people say, what are you saying, preach? It comes down to this, brothers and sisters, that the system is skewed to make sure that Dillard is at the bottom of the list, that it stays 100. They went through the factors. They have some people who do statistics. You gotta listen to this podcast because I'm gonna flip it in a minute, inshallah. But they went through statistics and this rating system that U.S. News and World Report had put together. And you have to understand that if you get ranked and you're at the bottom of, your school number 166, or you don't even make it, people look at that and go, that school may not be worth anything. It's not going to be that good. Think about that. Think about it. Let it sink in. Given what I told you at the top of the hour, the importance of these schools, they did the job nobody else wanted to do. They educated poor Black slaves, and then they made them into free. They educated freed slaves and created institutions based on the experiences that they came from. You see, the problem here lies in this thing right now. And I see it in society now. Every once in a while, I can say, you have an aha moment. I have an aha moment about this. For Dillard, according to this rating, think about this, because the ratings have a lot to do. And you know what it has to do with, number one, is money. So one of the ways the schools were rated was according to an endowment. Dillard has maybe 100 million. One of the schools has 2 billion. They got 2 billion. 100 million doesn't even cover the rent for this school. Tuition does not cover. I mean, they're giving away money all the time to get students in. Now you have schools that cost $50,000. Dillard is $19,000 a year. Why is that? I'm going to tell you. Because the cultural narrative of Dillard is that we serve the students. We serve the students. They have a very classic narrative that says that we'll take that child and raise them up. And so the instructors that you get are amazing instructors. Characteristics of historically Black colleges, and I know this for a fact, though I did not attend, is that they are very, very invested in you graduating as a student. If you come there for physics, if you come there for engineering, they're very, very invested in you walking out of the door with that physics degree or with that engineering degree or with that business degree. And here's the thing that I don't want to move off too quickly. It's the fact that they've created a culture around student education. When I say created a culture, I don't mean just learning, brothers and sisters. This is reminiscent of it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a college community to make sure a child graduates. And it takes a college community to make sure that other children see that child graduate. That doesn't happen. You see, they pointed out, and I agree. They pointed out that people wash out of Harvard and things like that because they get the creme de la creme when they come there. They're skimming off the top. So when they go into physics or something like that, when they don't get it, they bottom out. They bottom out because Harvard expects for them to be able to get it. That's how you got in. And when they don't get it, they bottom out. They leave or whatever. But in HBCUs, the idea is we know you may not be coming in with all the information. Thus, we're here to help you. Thus, we understand we've seen young students like you. And so it's incumbent on HBCU not only to give you the education, but also give you the preparation that goes along with that piece of education that you're trying to learn to master. When you stop and think about it, brothers and sisters, the problem with the Harvard versus a Dillard, and why they're ranked differently, is that Dillard could be ranked a lot better if it just stopped doing what it was doing. If Dillard stopped serving the underserved or catering to the underserved, their rankings would go up. And the rankings will go up because now you're not looking to help everybody. Now you're looking to specify and be very, very discriminating about who comes to your school. You've made an elite system now. So if you're pulling the kids who are very high and have the best grades, then that's going to reflect in the overall perspectives of your school. High graduation rates. You know, they said it in this thing, and I believe it. High graduation rates does not necessarily reflect the educational program. It reflects the quality of students that you're bringing in. So if you're Dillard University, you may not have that high quality student at the beginning, but they are developmental in nature and spirit. Developmental, which means that they have no problem trying to work and build that student. So when you start thinking about this, and there were a couple other things that they said, because they talked about what if you gave Dillard a bunch of money? They asked the president, if Dillard got $1 billion, what would you do? You know the first thing he said? He said, I would grow the university. And what he means by grow the university is he would literally take that money and try and serve more students. And it was reflected that if he did that, his ranking would probably go lower for Dillard University. Because big colleges don't do that. They don't expand and they let everyone in. They still keep it very exclusive and very elite. They make it difficult for you to come in. The idea that someone go, oh my gosh, did you hear that Satana Whitfield got into Dillard? Shut your mouth. Preacher Moss got into South Carolina State. He got into South Carolina State. Now, I'm being facetious. They're great universities. But I'm not being facetious because they do need to be celebrated that way. You know, my job as a comedian is, of course, to share information. But when I toured colleges all over the country since 1995, I would look at the schools, the big schools, the small schools. There was a small school down in South Carolina. Gosh, I can't even remember the name of it. It was so small. I did a show, and I remember all the students came late. The show was at 7 o'clock. They all showed up at 8 o'clock. Instead of taking my check and leaving, I didn't. And I sat down to 7 to 8 students. And I said, what happened? I said, what happened? And they began to tell me the idea and the philosophy of this school. And the reason why they didn't come is because their student activity director, who was white, booked me to come to the show, and they thought that it wasn't going to be anything. Of course, I was talking about racism and critical race theory. And ironically, I wound up sitting with them another hour talking these things through. But the guy, a young man, I think his name was Edward. His name was Edward. Edward was out of, I think, Little Rock, Arkansas. And Edward challenged me. He said, Mr. Moss, he said, where did you go to school? I said, I went to Marquette University. He goes, is that a HBCU? I said, nah. He said, it's not a HBCU? I said, nah. He said, do you know what we deal with down here, Mr. Moss? And I'm like, education? He said, no, Mr. Moss. He said, every day we have to make decisions on information that we take in. And he said, honestly, we looked at your poster and we said, we don't know if there's any information that we could derive. He said it was a caucus that they had in their home, in their dorm rooms to come down and at least meet me, which is fair, which is nice. And they began to school me about HBCUs. And I sat and listened to everybody's story, how they wound up at that school. This was not a major HBCU. This student population was less than 1,000. But I'm like, how did the school with less than 1,000 population operate? And he said, Mr. Moss, the town, if you will, supports this school because this school has meant so much to the town. That out of the students around here, you'll have some that go to D1 schools. He said, but you have some ones that have loyalty and understand the functionality of that particular school in that particular town, at that particular place. And he said, ironically, you're passing through, so we feel like you're not necessarily invested. And as we talked, I told him we talked about diversity and critical race theory, and they were very, very appreciative. You know, we went out and got something to eat later. What I want to point out, though, or I want to build on, is just the fact that as they went through this whole thing of ranking, and they did certain things like that met the algorithm. If Dillard didn't take in as many students, didn't serve the underserved, they went from ranking 166 to 103. And then if they had allowed a big endowment and they didn't take in as many students or whatever, and they built big facilities on the campus, they went from 103 to like 42. And they did one more thing, which was, of course, good graduation rates. And then they went from like 42 to 3. And I'm sitting here going, just a simple manipulation in a model, if you will, took them from being ranked less. They were ranked out of 166. They moved all the way up to 3. And then there's a question of fairness that runs in my mind. Fairness, equal access, all those type of things. And I said to myself, why can't Dillard be ranked in the top 5 of schools here in the United States? We have the money. You can give them $1 billion. I'm sure they will do what they're supposed to do. But then it came down to this. The HBCUs, for lack of a better word, represent the truth of what America is when it comes to education of not only Blacks, but education of the underserved. That the model or the presentation of elite schools is a mirage, brothers and sisters. This is to keep us from really, really, truly appreciating what these HBCU schools actually do and have done. To keep us galvanized and keep our eyes on the prize, per se, I think we have to reevaluate. I'm thinking about maybe going back to school and pursuing a doctorate. Maybe. But what I'm going to do, though, at the top of my list, is I'm going to take the first top 15 choices and I'm going to make them HBCUs. So if it's a master's, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to try and find a master's program with an HBCU. And the reason I'm going to do it It's because Dillard doesn't need my help. They don't need my help. It would be an honor to help the Dillards. It'd be an honor to help Howard University. It'd be an honor to help Maryland Eastern Shore. It would be an honor to help Prairie View A&M. It'd be an honor to help Texas Southern. It'd be an honor to help my Harry Medical School. It would be an honor to help them because, brothers and sisters, in the end, they're doing God's work. Does that make sense? Just like the functionality of a masjid or a church or a synagogue, on the educational level, in terms of theological dogma, they are doing that work. There's a quote that says, "Blessed are the meek." Well, my old teacher, Miss Alveda Jones, said, "Blessed are those that can read." She said, "Because don't nobody want to be meek." And I think about this all the time. You know, I want to wrap up because we're already at 30 minutes. But check out that podcast, brothers and sisters. Revisionist History. Go back to Revisionist History. And let me also add, my mother just jumped on here. My mother and my aunt both attended at HBCU, Howard University in Washington, D.C. So I was blessed with that model. But of course, like I said, I wanted to be a sports guy. I wanted to play D1 sports. But I often think, what if we found a private school that was run by Black people? What if I actually got to make a visit to HBCU? Like they have the tours. They have tours now where they take kids on tours. I'm like, what would have happened if I got to go and just be a part of that community and that culture, as opposed to chasing this situation? You know, we can take this thing all outside of just higher education, brothers and sisters. There are a lot of folks who, for lack of a better word, they enjoy the privilege of the Harvards, the Yales, but they don't have the educational acumen to actually be there. And some of them are legacy students, you know. But the funny part is they probably could not benefit from the high level of intellect, the high level of integrity that the HBCUs have, because they wouldn't have the patience to be developed. So I don't want to get out here. What we got here? Okay. I'm going to read Althoff and I'm going to read my mom. Most of our universities in Canada are public. Two most prestigious ones, University of Toronto, McGill University, and Montreal have about a 69% acceptance rate. Okay, cool. U.S. is not like that. Several top Black graduate schools, i.e. medical schools, have almost as many non-Black graduates as Black medical school graduates. Great medical schools, huh? That's true. Non-Black people have discovered the quality of HBCU education. That's probably another show. I remember watching a old movie of a white guy that played for Grambling State. I can't remember the name of it. He played football for Grambling State. And we were like, what is this white boy playing football for Grambling State? And all we could think of was, what kind of football player was he? And we could not wrap our minds around the fact that this guy made a very, very educated choice about where he wanted to get his education from, where he wanted to invest in higher learning from. It's like, yo, this is happening all the time. In fact, I have a good friend of mine, Brother Althoff Hussein, who he has a PhD and he attended Howard University. And Althoff is Pakistani. And you sit here going, what you doing? What you doing at this school? Man, they getting that education. What you doing? So I appreciate your patience. This was probably a larger topic. We probably need an hour on this topic, I think, because it's just a lot of societal aspects of this thing. I didn't even get to just trying to set it up, but think about it. Check out that podcast if you get a chance. Okay, so let's wrap up. Trying to break the debt of slavery here. I want you to check out BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. You can call 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. Check that out. If you're thinking about an Islamic graduate school experience, please check out Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Go to bayanonline.org. Again, that's bayanonline.org. Check it out. And if you're interested in a quality education, I would love for you to check out HBCUs. I don't think they have a HBCU.com or whatever, but just look up historically Black colleges and universities and do a little homework and appreciate the history and the effort of what they've been doing for a lot of years. So this show is dedicated to the love of HBCUs and the people who support them, people who come through their doors, people who come back through their doors. This wasn't a bang down job on all the other institutions, the Harvards, the big universities. It wasn't. This is just me trying to recognize the beauty of a particular contribution that I did overlook. And so I just wanted to take this half hour, 35 minutes to pay homage. That's our show, everybody. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the ShOUT Show. There you are. I know you're looking at your screen going, that's a good-looking black man. And you're right. I'm Preacher Moss, and you're not. Today, I want to talk about Olive Branch Muslim Family Services, better known as the people who help people. And I need you to help the people who help people so they can continue to, you guess it, help people. Get it? Got it? Good. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Graphic now.